Hi, I will continue reading Mein Kampf. During my last read, Hitler continue saying that basically the bourgeoisie was losing its battle towards the social democrats because social democrats took the working class, took the trades union very seriously, while bourgeoisie almost completely ignored them. As a result, social democrats kind of kind of patronized the trades union movement, and trades union movement became a puppet for social democrats to really further their political ploy. And uh, and of course, Hitler said that bourgeoisie is beyond repair. They were really entering a state of demise, and and also at the same time the free trades union movement under social democrats had turned into something diabolical, something quite heinous. People uh, killing each other, I suppose. And then Hitler continued vilifying the social democrats, saying that basically the entire manifesto, all the plans of democrats, uh, all the political plans and ideas of social democracy were all chicanery, all they were all political ploy to deceive naive people, stupid people. And during the end of my last read, Hitler finally started mentioning the Jewish because he thought that the Jewish is highly related to the social democracy movement, and it's interesting. I will start continue reading and let's see what does Hitler say about the Jewish. I do not remember even having heard the word at home during my father's life. Today it is hard and almost impossible for me to say when the word Jew first began to raise any particular thought in my mind. I do not remember even having heard the word at home during my father's lifetime. If this name were mentioned in a derogatory sense, I think that the old gentleman would just have considered those who used it in this way as being uneducated reactionaries. In the course of his career, he had come to be more or less a cosmopolitan, with strong views of nationalism, which had its effect on me as well. In school, too, I found no reason to alter the picture of things I had formed at home. At the real school, I knew one Jewish boy. We were all on our guard in our relations with him, but only because his reticence and certain actions of his warned us to be discreet. Beyond that, my companions and myself formed no particular opinions in regard to him. It was not until I was 14 or 15 years old that I frequently ran up against the word Jew, partly in connection with political controversies. These references aroused a slight aversion in me, and I could not avoid an uncomfortable feeling, which always came over me when I had to listen to religious disputes. But at that time, I had no other feelings about the Jewish question. There were very few Jews in Linz in the course of the centuries. The Jews who lived there had become Europeanized in external appearance and were so much like other human beings that I even looked upon them as Germans. The reason why I did not then perceive the absurdity of such an illusion was that the only external mark which I recognized as distinguishing them from us was the practice of their strange religion. As I thought that they were persecuted on account of their faith, my aversion to hearing remarks against them grew almost into a feeling of abhorrence. I did not in the least suspect that there could be such a thing as a systematic anti Semitism. Then I came to Vienna, confused by the mass of impressions I received from the architectural surroundings and depressed by my own troubles. I did not at first distinguish between the different social strata of which the population of that mammoth city was composed. Although Vienna then had about 200,000 Jews among its populations of 2 millions, I did not notice them. During 200,000 among 2 millions. What? That is about that was about 10%. Okay, during the first weeks of my sojourn, my eyes and my mind during the first week of my sojourn, my eyes and my mind were unable to cope with the onrush of new ideas and values. Not until I gradually settled down to my surroundings and the confused picture began to grow clearer did I acquire a more discriminating view of my new world. And with that, I came up against the Jewish problem. I will not say that the manner in which I first became acquainted with it was particularly unpleasant for me. In the Jew, I still saw only a man who was of a different religion, and therefore, on grounds of human tolerance, I was against the idea that he should be attacked because he had a different faith. And so I consider that the tone adopted by the anti-Semitic press in Vienna was unworthy of the cultural traditions of a great people. The memory of certain events which happened in the Middle Ages came into my mind, and I felt that I should not like to see them repeated. Generally speaking, this anti-Semitic newspaper did not belong to the first rank. But I did not then understand the reason of this, and so I regarded them more as a product of jealousy and envy rather than the expression of a sincere, though wrong-headed feeling. My own opinions were confirmed by what I considered to be infinitely more dignified manner, in which the really great press replied to those attacks or simply ignored them, which latter seemed to me the most respectable way. I diligently read what was generally called the world press, Neue Freie Presse, Wiener Tageblatt, sorry for the German, etc., and I was astonished by the abundance of information they gave their readers and the impartial way in which they presented particular problems. I appreciated their dignified tone, but sometimes the flamboyancy of the style was unconvincing and I did not like it. But I attributed all this to the overpowering influence of the world metropolis. Since I considered Vienna at that time as such a world metropolis, I thought this constituted sufficient grounds to excuse these shortcomings of the press. But I was frequently disgusted by the groveling way in which the Vienna press played lackey to the court. Scarcely a move took place at the Hofburg which was not presented in glorified colors to the readers. It was a foolish practice, which, especially when it had to do with the wisest monarch of all times, reminded one almost of the dance which the mountain cock performs at pairing time to woo his mate. It was all empty nonsense, and I thought that such a policy was a stain on the ideal of liberal democracy. I thought that this way of currying favor at a court was unworthy of the people. And that was the first blot that fell on my appreciation of the great Vienna press. While in Vienna, I continued to follow with a vivid interest all the events that were taking place in Germany, whether connected with political or cultural questions. I had a feeling of pride and admiration when I compared the rise of the young German Empire with the decline of the Austrian state. But although the foreign policy of the empire was a source of real pleasure on the whole, the internal political happenings were not always so satisfactory. I did not approve of the campaign which at that time was being carried on against William II. I look upon him not only as a German emperor, but above all as the creator of the German navy. The fact that the emperor was prohibited from speaking in the Reichstag made me very angry because the prohibition came from a side which in my eyes had no authority to make it. For at a single sitting, those same parliamentary gunders did more cackling together than the whole dynasty of emperors, comprising even the weakest, had done in the course of centuries. It annoyed me to have to acknowledge that in a nation where any half-witted fellow could claim for himself the right to criticize and might even be let loose on the people as legislator in the Reichstag, the bearer of the imperial crown could be the subject of a reprimand on the part of the most miserable assembly of drivellers that had ever existed. I was even more disgusted at the way in which this same Vienna press salamed obsequiously before the meaner steed belonging to the Habsburg royal and equipage, and went off into wild ecstasy of delight if the neck waged its tail in response. And at the same time, this newspaper took up an attitude of anxiety in matters that concerned the German emperor, trying to cloak their enmity by the serious air they gave themselves. But in my eyes, that enmity appeared to be only poorly cloaked. Naturally, they protested that they had no intention of messing in Germany's internal affairs. God forbid. They pretended that by touching a delicate spot in such a friendly way, they were fulfilling a duty that devolved upon them by reason of the mutual alliance between the two countries. And at the same time discharging their obligations of journalistic truthfulness. Having thus excused themselves about tenderly touching a sore spot, they bored with a finger ruthlessly into the wound. That sort of thing made my blood boil, and now I began to be more and more on my guard when reading the great Vienna press. I had to acknowledge, however, that on such subjects, one of the anti-Semitic papers, the Deutsches Volksblatt, acted more decently. What got still more on my nerves was the repugnant manner in which the big newspaper cultivated admiration for France. One really had to feel ashamed of being a German when confronted by those mellifluous hymns of praise for the great cultured nation. This wretched Gallomania more often than once made me throw away one of those world newspapers. I now often turn to the Volksblatt, which was much smaller in size, but which treated such subjects more decently. I was not in accord with its sharp anti-Semitic tone, but again and again I found that its arguments gave me grounds for serious thoughts. Anyhow, it was a result of such reading that I came to know the man and the movement which then determined the fate of Vienna. These were Dr. Karl Lueger and the Christian Socialist movement. At the time I came to Vienna, I felt opposed to both. I looked on the man and the movement as reactionary, but even an elementary sense of justice enforced me to change my opinion when I had the opportunity of knowing the man and his work. I'll stop here. It's quite hard to understand today, partly because vocabulary is quite hard today, but also I have to reread to see all the newspaper Hitler berated. Okay, see you in another episode. Goodbye.